A few weeks ago, Taliban forces extended their sway over most of Afghanistan, leaving the American military to conduct a hasty and ill-coordinated airlift. Those US forces had occupied most of the country and provided security for the building of infrastructure, civil society, and the entrenchment of a regime more friendly to their interests for 20 years. But this was an outcome that almost everybody expected, and which everybody, except the very political and military experts the US employed, had publicly talked about for over a decade. Does history have any lessons to teach us? There are certainly plenty of people who think so, and much of the commentary is as historically illiterate as it is fundamentally wrong, whether it's an LSE pundit's claim that no one has successfully ruled the country for 2,500 years, or comparisons with British or Soviet invasions. Observations that many of the Afghan elite the Americans courted are drawn from the same groups that ruled in the 18th century, or similarities between the evacuation and the fall of Saigon. The key thing to understand about all of these commentaries is that they are not learning lessons. They are just drawing parallels. What's the difference? The thing about a lesson is you apply it. You learn that you should or shouldn't do something a particular way, in order that when the thing happens, you can perform the task well. You learn lessons before you do things. But drawing a parallel is a post hoc activity. You draw a parallel after something has happened. Too late to change anything. And while it is easy to draw parallels, it is much harder to learn lessons. In the case of Afghanistan, what people tend to do is draw a series of parallels and then extrapolate from them as if the parallels are evidence of a general rule, something you could actually take a lesson from. So let us tackle just one common lesson that people draw. Afghanistan has always been fractious and ungovernable, and the people will always violently resist foreign rule. Yes, we will leave aside that once you start to examine that idea as an unchanging historical phenomenon, it sounds a little bit racist, and simply credit everyone involved with a bad case of geographical determinism. But you see, it's not really true. In the late first millennium, the region we call Afghanistan was incorporated by Arab armies, which extended their rule in large part by the establishment of garrisons of foreign troops. Governors would be cycled in and out of the region for centuries by the Umayyad caliphs and then by the Abbasids ruling from Baghdad, nearly 2,000 miles to the west. There are administrative records which survive from this transition of local families paying their taxes to the new regime. And there is nothing terribly unusual about that historical moment. The Yuezhi, the Kushans, Kushanshahs, Heftalites, Western Turks, Sasanians, Samanids, Ghaznavids, Mongols, Mughals, and so on, all at various points incorporated this region into their imperial domains. Did they do so in the face of determined armed resistance and only by constant military expenditure? Some of them certainly, but not all of them. In fact, a Chinese history from the early centuries AD, the Han Shu, gives us a very different picture. The Chinese had sent a diplomatic mission to the rulers of the region, the Yuezhi, in the 2nd century BC, and that diplomat had presented a report to the court. In summarising this, the Han Shu felt it necessary to explain how the Yuezhi had so easily conquered the region it knew as Ta-Xia and maintained control for several centuries. By way of such an explanation, the Han Shu says, Ta-Xia originally had no great kings or heads, but everywhere in their walled cities and settlements they had installed small heads. The people are weak and fear war. Therefore, when the Yuezhi came migrating to the west, they completely subdued and tamed them. Yes, the people are weak and fear war. The Han Shu could not present an account more at odds with the historical facts most modern writers are keen to cite. And this is the critical point. Things change. They depend on context. There are no general laws, and nothing ever repeats itself in exactly the same way. We can refer to this concept as contingency. Contingency is the idea that historical events are the product of the specific historical contexts in which they occur. And you can take different positions on how contingent historical events are. You will find lots of anthropologists, political scientists, and sociologists. Not everyone who studies the past is a historian. who think you can extract general rules of historical progress. For a long time, historians very much thought you could do that too. Look at the work of a mid-20th century writer like Toynbee. But increasingly today, research historians lose themselves in the idea of contingency, that the answers to their questions are to be sought in the detail of the moment they study. I don't expect that Chinese account of the Yuqi to explain Umayyad military success 1,000 years later, and I certainly don't expect either of them to inform my understanding of the US withdrawal today. If I want to understand the US withdrawal, I should be asking questions about Afghanistan now, about the reckless disregard for reality so prevalent in the United States today, and the complete lack of political will to commit the necessary resources to the nation-building project Western powers were at least rhetorically involved in. And you should too. There are no lessons in history, only parallels. Okay, that is a bit of an overstatement. The fact is that historians widely disagree on how contingent they think historical events are, and to what degree you can compare or draw general lessons from them. But my main point stands. Increasingly through the 20th century, historical researchers have favoured at least a mild form of historical contingency, that you understand things through the study of their time and place, their context, not by the imposition of generalisations from parallels in other times and places. And if not universally applicable, it is at least an important caveat you should bear in mind any time someone raises the idea of lessons from history. Oh, I suppose one last thought or comment. I've never visited Afghanistan, though I extensively study the antiquities of the region, which is partly why I felt the need to slot these thoughts into the schedule. And it would be natural to expect me to have strong opinions on the potential damage to antiquities as a result of current events. But to be honest, I don't. Or at least, I'm not half as concerned as I am for the people living in the country. The barely literate fanatics who are taking over seem no more capable of managing a complex state than they were 20 years ago, and no doubt the instability they cause will hurt people and destroy parts of the historical record. I cannot do anything about either of those, but only one of them is really important. In the last period of instability, curators at the Kabul Museum risked their lives to preserve finds from an ancient burial at Tillya-Tepe, which is, I believe, still on tour internationally under the title Ancient Treasures from Afghanistan. Despite this, from conversations I've had over the last 10 years, it seems there was extensive damage to the ceramics collection in the museum, which in many ways, because it is less well studied, is more important. No doubt there will be irreplaceable damage to other parts of the historical record. And remember, that is just as much our historical record, representing as it does the beginnings of international trade, the spread of Buddhism, the origins of coinage in Asia, and much else that is part of a shared global heritage. And no doubt much will be preserved by the courage and perseverance of its custodians. From the sidelines, the best we can do is hope for their safety.